Thank you everyone for joining us. Today we're at the meeting for the Hamilton Avenue SR17 bicycle overcrossing feasibility study. My name is Regina Merrill and I'm a project manager with Circle Point, who's supporting the community outreach and engagement for this project. Next slide. This is our agenda for this evening. First, we'll go over the project background and goals, public engagement and stakeholder input to date, design alternatives and evaluation, and then next steps. Now I'd like to pass it to Matthew Jew with the City of Campbell.
Good evening. So how did we get here? Goes without saying that it's challenging to walk or bike along Hamilton Avenue over Highway 17. The environment is uninviting. There are conflicts with freeway ramp traffic, and the existing bridge has constraints. Therefore, the purpose of this study is to determine whether an overcrossing that parallels Hamilton Avenue is feasible. The goals for the facility are to have a design that is feasible and constructible, that addresses the public's concerns, is acceptable to Caltrans, who owns the right-of-way where the structure would be located, and we want to get a sense of what the project cost would be. Ultimately, we would report study findings to the City Council to seek direction on how to proceed. In 2022, a funding opportunity became available for preparing a feasibility study. The 2016 Measure B Bicycle and Pedestrian Planning Studies Grant. The city applied for and was awarded a grant to study the feasibility of a Hamilton Avenue State Route 17 bicycle and pedestrian overcrossing. A consultant team led by HMH engineers was selected. The team includes Biggs Cardosa Associates, a structural engineering firm, and Circle Point, a public engagement firm. Regarding activities thus far, the HMH team has researched existing facilities, record drawings, and utility maps. HMH will summarize the team's public engagement efforts and the design alternatives that have been evaluated in just a few moments. Meanwhile, regarding concurrent projects, the staff is coordinating the concurrent projects you may have heard about the Hamilton Avenue Public Improvement Plan, as well as the city's multimodal transportation plan. Resources, progress, and meeting schedules are continually shared among the project teams. This feasibility study will inform the Hamilton Avenue Public Improvement Plan on the potential alignment and costs of an overcrossing over Highway 17. We will share more information on the Hamilton Avenue Public Improvement Plan at the very end of this meeting. Please stay until the very end. So with that, we will hand things over to HMH, who will share their findings thus far.
Thank you, Matthew. Hi, I am John Cacciati, a principal with HMH Engineers, and have been leading the consultant effort studying alternatives for the project footprint and configuration. The project is located at Hamilton Avenue and State Route 17. The yellow circle there is the limits of the study area. As Matthew mentioned, there's a broader corridor that will have some additional information at the end of the study that reaches from Bascom Avenue and to the west of the screen here. But again, our project is focused at the interchange and crossing the high stress movements with Caltrans and the state highway system. Also nearby is the old Fry's Electronics building in the southwest quadrant of the project area and the VTA light rail station in the southeast quadrant. Existing conditions out there are outdated and do not meet current best practices for multimodal accommodations, including bicycle and pedestrian stress levels. So the project is seeking to improve these existing conditions by reconfiguring the interchange and potentially realigning the bicycle and pedestrian route through the project area to improve pedestrian comfort and lower stress levels for all ages and abilities for our bicycle and pedestrian commuters across the project corridor. As you can see, existing conditions do have yield control crossings at our on and off ramps, or at the loop on ramp specifically, which can be very stressful as a pedestrian is trying to navigate whether or not a vehicle will yield as they use those crosswalks. Similarly, crosswalks are narrow and in some cases outdated or are inconsistent in their definition through the corridor. Real quick, I'd like to recap some activities that have occurred over the life of the project, including engagement with the public and other stakeholders. Earlier this year, we engaged in a community survey of which we received over 400 responses, and we held a similar in-person public outreach meeting to describe the project. At that time, no alternatives were developed, and we were working with a blank canvas, trying to identify how the community and the local residents would like to see a solution and how they would prioritize the trade-offs of these treatments. One of the things that we really sought to seek out is various experience levels of our bicycle and pedestrian users, those that may be confident and use roadway facilities, as well as those that may be inexperienced or uncomfortable on the existing facilities. We also sought input from residents throughout the city and neighboring communities to ensure that we have a good representation. On the right, there is a bar graph of the prioritizations that we sought from the public. So the question we asked was, what aspects of a bicycle and pedestrian facility do you consider most important? And those were ranked on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the most important. And so as you can see from our survey results, safety was the single largest factor, followed by ease of use, connectivity, and access to bikeways, residential areas, and schools, as well as minimizing the potential conflicts with motorized vehicles. The lowest scoring of that poll were the minimization of private property acquisition, as well as cost and environmental impact. So the overall storyline is that we understood from the public at that time was prioritize safety and separate those conflicts with vehicles. We also engaged our stakeholder partners, including the City of Campbell's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, VTA, Caltrans, and the City of San Jose. We presented the alternatives for viability, fatal flaws, any issues that they may have, as well as compatibility with other ongoing projects, either in the City of Campbell or elsewhere through the City of San Jose and the region. Each of the project partners here has reviewed our project plans and has demonstrated concurrence with and support for the project as a whole. For the alternatives developed, we evaluated them on a number of metrics, and these metrics are very similar to what was described in the stakeholder outreach and the survey performed earlier this year. Key areas that were evaluated were the user experience. How does it feel to be on this facility, including number of conflict points, how separated you are from vehicles, the delay associated with signalized crossings of different movements for bicycles and pedestrians. We looked at impacts to traffic operations, ensuring that our project alternatives, if they do have an impact to traffic operations, which are heavily congested in this corridor, that we understand those trade-offs. Environmental, both visual and biology, potential impact to trees or native species, and the impacts of our project alternative. Design standards. This would be consistent with required design standards, most governed by Caltrans Highway Design Manual, as well as the Traffic Safety Systems Guidance Manual. And so looking for how compatible is our design with those design criteria. Cost and feasibility, construction cost, including and maintenance costs, which we'll talk about a little bit when we discuss our structures, implementation and feasibility, including impacts to State Route 17 for construction of the facility, and finally community support. How consistent is the alternatives that we are developing with the feedback that we've heard both in our initial public outreach meeting and then as a result of this round of public outreach? I'm going to briefly introduce each of the 4 alternatives that were studied, as well as some major pros and cons that help to elevate or either increase or decrease how these alternatives were scored as we looked at them in comparison to each other. The first route is the southern route. In this exhibit, State Route 17 is running top to bottom on your screen, and Hamilton Avenue is running left to right. North is up. In this alternative, bicycles and pedestrians would be routed off of Hamilton Avenue to the south, along roughly 500 feet south of Hamilton Avenue, over both the southbound diagonal on-ramp from Hamilton to State Route 17, as well as the highway itself over State Route 17. The alignment would then tuck in a landscaped area in between the northbound loop on-ramp and the VTA light rail retaining wall that runs diagonal through the project screen. The alternative would continue to the east and cross under the existing light rail structure at grade in roughly the same location as the existing sidewalk. The project would terminate on both the east and west intersections as shown here, with upgraded facilities at those intersections to facilitate bicycle and pedestrian ingress egress. In the westbound direction, we would also add a bike lane that is not present currently and enhance it with green striping and other markings to delineate that facility for use by westbound cyclists that did not want to use the Class 1 grade separated facility to the south. One thing I'll note with this alternative is it's fully grade separated at all ramps. It has no at-grade crossings of a ramp or the main line. That is not true for some of our other alternatives we'll talk about in just a moment. It is more circuitous, and so as we look at pedestrian comfort, it does introduce some out-of-direction travel, which can be a drawback to users using this alignment and may increase travel times, particularly for pedestrians. The profile of this, the vertical change, is actually very gradual. So unlike a lot of other pedestrian overcrossing structures where there's a large hill or obstacle to climb, this would have very flat grades at 2 to 3% through the project corridor, meaning that it was a very gradual profile for both cyclists and pedestrians to navigate. The second alternative is the Campbell Loop. Similar to the first alternative, we would install a Class 1 facility south of Hamilton Avenue. In this configuration, working from the left to the right on your screen, the new facility, which would be a Class 1 shared use path, and that is true for all of these alternatives, it would cross at grade at a yield control crossing of the southbound diagonal ramp. So this would be a traditional crosswalk with enhanced paint for cyclists in a cross bike configuration. We would construct a new bridge south of the existing Hamilton Avenue structure that would be for bicycles and pedestrians only over State Route 17. That structure would then decrease and essentially drop below grade in the loop, where you see that circular movement inside of the northbound loop, and cross under the northbound loop vehicular traffic in a grade separated condition. It would then continue back up to the existing grade attached to the south side of Hamilton Avenue and terminate at the intersection to the east. Major pros of this alternative is that it reduces some of that out of direction travel that we talked about with the southern route. It is the most direct, particularly with a convenient staircase in the loop for pedestrians, but it does have some drawbacks. It does have a more significant vertical change in profile as opposed to the southern loop, and most notably, it retains an at-grade crossing of the southbound diagonal on-ramp. This alternative has similar treatments at both the western and eastern intersections shown here, with upgrades to bicycle and pedestrian crossings at those intersections. I'll also note this alternative would add a westbound bicycle lane consistent with the southern loop, and the green paint is shown for enhanced crossings on your screen here. An image of the undercrossing is shown in the bottom left corner of the screen. This is what an example of what that crossing underneath the northbound loop on-ramp could look like, opening up that structure so that it has passage of light and air and the appearance of a safe facility that you can see through and understand the obstacles you may be navigating on a bike or as a pedestrian. The third alternative is the straight shot. It would again remain on the south side of Hamilton Avenue. And this alternative would have at-grade crossings from left to right at the southbound diagonal on-ramp. There would be a new structure over State Route 17, similar to the alternative I just described. And then it would, instead of looping within the loop, on the northbound loop on-ramp, it would cross at grade across the at-grade crossing of the northbound loop on-ramp and then continue at grade on the south side of Hamilton Avenue. Major pros of this alternative is it has fewer structures than other peers, and in that regard, it is more cost effective, but it does retain at-grade crossings of both loop ramps, which can introduce conflicts and stress levels for those all ages and abilities riders that we are trying to accommodate. Similar to each of the alternatives described so far, enhanced bike facilities would be added in the westbound direction of Hamilton Avenue and intersection improvements as shown previously. And finally, our fourth alternative is the minimalist. In this configuration, no new structures would be constructed. We would realign the lanes existing on Hamilton Avenue and attach a Class 1 facility, or I should say, replace the existing southern sidewalk with a Class 1 facility that would be shared use by both bicycles and pedestrians. At-grade crossings would exist at both the southbound on-ramp and northbound loop on-ramp. And for this alternative to fit within the existing structure, we would not be able to include westbound bike lane enhancements as shown on previous alternatives. So westbound cyclists could either cross at the intersections entering and exiting the project area to use the new Class 1 facility or occupy a traveled lane, both of which are compromises to the ultimate success and delivery of the project purpose. So recapping briefly on the four alternatives, starting with alternative 1, the southern route, and alternative 2, the Campbell loop. Those two really seem to be the most promising as we worked through our evaluation and met with stakeholders because of their grade-separated facilities. They are generally more expensive than the straight shot and the minimalist, but as we saw earlier from input from public comment, cost was not a driving factor, and safety and physical separation from cyclists was. For those reasons, both the straight shot and the minimalist are recommended for discontinuation from any further study. Now, the southern route and the Campbell loop are both promising and have trade-offs. The southern route, I'll note, does have some complexities with interface between VTA and Caltrans for future maintenance and long-term operations of State Route 17, although they have demonstrated that they would be supportive of that alternative. Similarly, the Campbell loop retains an at-grade crossing of the southbound diagonal on-ramp, but is a more cost-effective solution. And so those are the two front runners at this point of our evaluation criteria. So real quick, again, the southern route and the Campbell loop are alternatives that we are interested in additional input from both the community and from City Council. Again, the pros of the southern route is it's a flatter profile and it eliminates all conflicts with those ramp movements, but it is longer end to end and it does have some construction challenges adjacent to the light rail structure that's owned and maintained by VTA. Similarly, the Campbell loop is shorter in a total length traveled, and it does eliminate conflicts with that northbound loop on-ramp, but it does have steeper grades, which may be a larger challenge to either cyclists or pedestrians, as well as it retains an at-grade crossing with the southbound on-ramp. With that, I will pass it to John Alciati, who will talk about some of the structures crossing over State Route 17.
Great. Thank you, John. My name is John Alciati. I'm with Biggs Cardosa Associates, and we're providing the structure support on this project. I want to go to the next slide. So as John described earlier with the roadway alignments, those will require a bridge structure to cross Highway 17, either closer to the existing overcrossing or closer to the light rail and UPRR tracks. And those are shown in green fill there on this view. I want to go to the next slide. We looked at multiple structure types to carry the people across Highway 17. The first option we looked at was a 2-span concrete box girder option, which is your kind of standard Caltrans structure option. It does have a column in the middle of Highway 17. This is your most cost-effective and least maintenance for the city, and any aesthetic opportunities that would be allowed for this structure type would be more texture finishes on the concrete surfaces around the column or the sides of the bridge, and railing aesthetics can be added as well. We also looked at clear span options, so no columns in the median of Highway 17. One of those options is using a steel truss. The example on the left is a steel truss that has weathering steel, so it gives you more of a rustic look. And on the right is a painted steel truss with some painted fins on there that adds some aesthetic appeal to that. Both of these structure types are more expensive than the concrete alternative and also have more maintenance requirements that the city would need to accommodate. And on the last option that we looked at was a steel network tied arch option. This is an arch structure with cables that come down to the deck level and support the deck as this clear spans the freeway. So no columns in the median. This is the most expensive structure type of the three. And it can be painted to provide aesthetic appeal to the structure as well. This will also have increased maintenance compared to the other two options. And in summary, some of the pros and cons that I touched on previously for the 2-span concrete box girder option, least expensive, and is a standard Caltrans structure type, has less maintenance compared to the other options, but does require a column in the freeway and false work to construct this bridge that will need to be placed temporarily over the freeway to construct it. The single span steel truss and steel network tied arch options are clear spanning the freeway, no columns in the median. They do have different aesthetic opportunities, but they will be more expensive and require more maintenance compared to the concrete box girder option. And with that, I'll pass it over to Regina.
John? All right, so now we'll talk about next steps. This feasibility study we finalized in December of this year, after which it will be presented to City Council in February 2026. Then the next steps after that are, if council authorizes and the funding becomes available, this project will move into a design phase and then a construction phase. Next slide. All right, so that is all the information we have on the study for you this evening. Thank you so much. You can go ahead and scan the QR code, which will take you to the project website for more information. This meeting recording will also be posted to the project website along with a survey to get some of your input on some of the design and structure information that we shared. And next I'll hand it off to Matthew for additional information.
Thank you, Regina. So before we leave you, if you would like to participate in the Hamilton Avenue Public Improvement Plan, which is a study of the broader Hamilton Avenue corridor between Winchester Boulevard and Bascom Avenue, please scan the QR code for more information. And thank you for attending.